Today I'm going to give you everything you need to make professional sounding pop vocals in Ableton. No external plugins. I'm giving away a free template in the link below, and this video is going to be like a walkthrough / tutorial for it. So if you want to go ahead and download the template right now so you can follow along in this video, go ahead. Let's get into Ableton. So if you saw my other video where I gave out a rack called Ableton Vocal Essentials, this is kind of like the next step to that. So where that rack was a really handy pedal box type thing of really quick, good sounding effects, this is everything you need to get that crisp, properly mixed pop vocal sound. And this is pretty much the exact chain that I would use in a full pop or EDM production. So let's go through and show you what's inside. So before I even get to any specific track, I want to show you this top level thing I have in this group. Now when you download this is going to be exactly what you get. It's all of these different tracks and the racks within. So the first thing here I have is a de-esser that's kind of taken off any of those really sibilant S sounds or sometimes T sounds, just depending on your voice. And I'm going to show you how this works. So I'm actually going to demonstrate with some wind noise instead of vocals right now, just to show you how it's only working on specific frequencies. So if I go ahead and play this, I really like that sound, but it's just really like grating to my ears. So I'm going to actually pull this de-esser down a little bit. And for something like this, I might just bring down the highs, but I want to show you how this de-esser works. So if I bring down the threshold over here, you can see that it's kind of taking out some of those high, really harsh sounding frequencies. And now I have this audio rack here for really simple control of the thing. But what it's doing is it's controlling the threshold of the compressor, and it's also controlling the frequency range. And how this is set is side chaining from the entire vocal group. This is how you do de-essing in Ableton with this stock compressor. And then we have an EQ, so it's only going to listen to, right now, 6K and everything above that because it's a high pass. So if I were to engage this audition button, so we're only listening to those frequencies, this is what you hear. See how you only hear those really high frequencies? Now, if I were to bring this frequency range down, it's going to affect more of this entire signal. And then if I were to bring it all the way down, it's just going to compress the entire thing. Awesome. So moving on, this is a really handy, super simple EQ that you can use for really quick control of the overall vocal mix, because sometimes when you get a really dense vocal mix going where you have all these doubles and harmonies, you might notice, oh, there's a buildup in just this set of frequencies. So this is just really easy control for some of that. You have low, mid, and high, and you can sweep the mids just like that. So now let's go over and check out this high pass. This is obviously really simple. It's just a high pass, but it's useful to be able to automate. So say there's a part where you're building it up to a chorus section and you want to create some tension, and you kind of just bring out all the low end all at once. So you can do something like this. Here, I'll demonstrate with the noise sound again. Just gives you really quick control and enables you to do a really fast high pass effect. So getting on to the lead vocal track. So when I demonstrate this lead track, I'm actually going to record just my own voice because I don't want to drag in a sample of something from Splice that's already super processed, because this is more about mixing this time as opposed to effects. So I'm going to record some of my own completely dry voice in my semi-noisy room. And I'm also going to use a snare drum so we can hear the compression, because it's really helpful with super transient things to be able to hear compression, especially if you're watching on a phone. So what we have in here is this rack called Pro Pop, and it has a bunch of really handy effects that I would use all the time. Number one thing is reducing noise. So sometimes you record a track and you just have a little bit too much of a noisy room, and we want to be able to just control that super quickly, super effectively. So I'm going to demonstrate really quick by just recording my room tone and then speaking a little bit, and then we're going to remove some of the noise. This is me testing the reduce noise knob. So I recorded my room. I gained up my vocal because my mic's a bit quiet, and let's hear what this does. So this is with nothing on it. This is me testing the reduce noise knob. Now let's turn this up. This is me testing the reduce noise knob. Very quick, very effective. And this is controlling the multi-band dynamics. This is the reduce ambience preset for really quickly just getting some of that room noise. If you crank it too high, you'll start to hear some artifacts, but it's a really great starting point. So moving on, I have just simple compression. I'm going to demonstrate here with this snare drum because it's really handy to demonstrate compression with something that's very transient. All right, so here's with no compression, and you can see we're controlling this compressor right here. Okay, pretty snappy, short snare drum. Now if I turn this knob all the way up, you can hear how the snare drum is less snappy now and how it feels like it's longer as well. And you can see this in the waveform right here. Go back to the with nothing. So super quick compression. So let's now check out this pop hi-fi knob. I think this is a really cool one. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually pull up this reduce noise knob a little bit just to get rid of some of my room noise so we're not listening to that. And I'm going to record a little bit of my vocal. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. I'm actually going to compress my vocal a little bit too. So here's what it sounds like with the reduce noise knob and the compression knob up. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. Now let's turn up that knob. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. You may not be able to hear that on like a phone or a small speaker, but it's adding a lot of really pleasing high-end harmonics and just brightness. It doesn't sound harsh. This is how you get that crispy vocal sound. If you go through like a splice library and hit vocal samples and just go through all of them, you hear this like exact sound. And that's my best attempt at trying to recreate that sound. It's kind of like a recreation of Fresh Air by Slate Digital, really popular plugin out there. But this is all in the box, and that is due to a few different things. So the first is we're controlling a high shelf on our EQ. Then we're also controlling a multi-band that is compressing just the high end of the vocal. And then we're also adding a little bit of distortion just to the high frequencies. I'll go back with and without. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. This is me testing the pop hi-fi knob. Awesome. Now let's go on to our next thing. I'm going to close a couple of these out so we can see what we're looking at here. I also have this multi-band compressor with just some really quick knobs. So I'm going to make a note on this multi-band here. Now with the multi-band, I really tried to set it in the middle so it can handle a range of frequencies and a range of vocal sounds. And I set it so that it compresses them, but it doesn't blow up their volume into the sky afterwards. But it's ultimately going to depend on the strong frequencies in your vocal. So say if you have a really bassy voice, you may want to change the output of the low compression knob so that when it compresses it, it doesn't add a ton of gain afterwards. As you know, when we compress something, it squashes it down and kind of flattens the transient of it, and that ends up turning it down, so then we have to gain it back up afterwards. I would call it program dependent, where it means that it's going to be different depending on what's going into it. I'm going to demonstrate on the snare drum again. Let me remove the other compression and this other knob, and let's just focus on our multi-band. So that's dry. Now, if I pull up this high compression knob, we're starting to compress the highs. And this is what we're looking at, by the way, right here. And then this mid knob starts to bring out some of those mid frequencies and extends them. So let's listen to that. But it doesn't make them too overbearing or like boxy sounding, but it adds some subtle weight to those mid frequencies. And now let's crank up the low knob. And we don't hear much there, but that is because there's hardly any low frequencies in this in the first place. So let's test it with my voice really quick. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. That's dry. And then here's my low gained up. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. So how this multi-band works is it is bringing down the threshold of the multi-band compressor, and it's also bringing up the output at the same time. You can actually see these happen if you look at the high frequencies. See how both are moving when I move this knob? It's good to kind of have them all up a little bit, because that means we're compressing all of our vocal a little bit throughout the entire thing. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. Now, I feel like when I'm bringing this low knob up, it's actually just bringing my low up a little too much, so I want to control that. So you can actually go in and totally control this by hitting the map button, and let me have this open over here. You see all these things start to pop up. This is how I made this rack. And if I go to the low compression output gain, I'm actually going to bring that down a little bit. That means when I go and compress my low frequencies of my voice, it's not going to bring the makeup gain way too much, because as you know, compression, we're squashing down frequencies, so that means we have to actually gain them back. We have to bring up the volume of them afterwards, and it was doing that too much, so I just brought that down a little bit more. Let's go a couple more dB just for safety. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is me testing the multi-band. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. So you may only be able to hear this on headphones or something, but it's actually giving some nice weight and like controlling my low frequencies of my voice. And I don't have a super boomy voice, but it is controlling them somewhat. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. If you have a bassy voice, I think this will really help to control those low frequencies, but I think you might have to play with that output gain. All right, now let's go on to our Ad-libs track. This is like a playground here. It has some of the types of effects that were in that other rack that I gave out called Ableton Vocal Essentials. And we have some of the same stuff in here. We have the reduced noise, but we also have way more just super fun things. So let me pull a vocal sample in for this one, because I think you're tired of hearing my voice. I'm actually going to pull in the same exact sample from the other video here. This is a splice sample. I do not own it, but it's just a really good sample, and I wanted to use it to demonstrate some things. So let's see here. So here I'm going to play it dry.
Don't you think like that?
There's almost no noise to reduce, but it is the same thing as the other track. So I brought in this vocal sample, and I'm actually going to go ahead and play the sample and tweak some things throughout so you can hear what this rack can do.
Don't you think like that? I will love you endlessly if you don't believe in me. Don't you be like that? I will love you forever if you don't believe in me. Yeah. Don't you think like that? I will love you endlessly if you don't believe in me. Don't you be like that? I will love you forever if you don't believe in me. Yeah.
I'm going to use a snare drum to demonstrate the glitch delay. So this track is for the things in the background that you would use to kind of extend a line or repeat something, or an echo. This is why I call it the Ad-libs track. So these are some really spacey type of effects to accentuate, and they're not really meant for a lead vocal sound. So our double and harmony tracks, they're sitting here, they're all the same, but they're a reminder to you to record a lot of vocals, because it sounds so cool when you stack your vocals and make them wide and pan them all over. Obviously there's a level of control there you want to use, but it sounds great to have more vocals. It adds a more dynamic effect, and I really recommend you try it if you haven't already. So these things in here are just tools to control things. We have let's open this rack up. I pulled our sample into this harmony track. Let's see what it's doing. Okay. So the main thing I normally do with doubles and harmonies is that I just kind of control the things that are building up too much. So for instance, doubles and harmonies don't often need to have the same low frequency content or high frequency content. So sometimes I bring them back down in the middle just to control some of that stuff. And that's a simple way of doing it. Obviously, you can go through and dynamically EQ your entire vocal mix, but that's not something that we're doing here today in Ableton. We're going to keep it a little more simple because that can get really complicated really fast.
Don't you think like that? I will love you endlessly.
So this is a super bright sample, and let me pull our reverb send down, which I'll show you in a second. If we listen to this sample,
don't you think like that?
It's really full and bright, and that's great, but in the context of it being a harmony or a double, I might want to control a bit of that. So what I might do is,
don't you think like that?
I
will love you endlessly if you'd only believe in me. Don't you be.
And then we also have our reduced noise in here as well. Also, our return effects, I forgot to show you these. So if I play this other vocal sample that I was using earlier, this is me testing the multi-band compressor. I have some return effects in here, and let's send to them a bit. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is a super simple reverb with a kind of medium decay. Obviously, you can go through and control this, but I think it's my favorite kind of sound of a reverb, and I also have it being compressed just to control the level and the transient of the reverb. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. So you don't have to crank it up very high to be able to hear it. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. Then I have a delay here also being compressed, quarter note, and a short feedback just for the simple delay throws. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. This is me testing. This is me. Probably not the best example because these aren't tempo synced. And if I were going through and doing delay throws, this is kind of what it would look like. You know, every few lines, kind of just crank that send up just for a second, send it to the delay, and then bring it back down so you're not sending too much to the delay. And then finally, this widening effect. This is a really helpful effect if you don't want to go ahead and record some doubles. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. Instantly, we get that wider sound, and that's sometimes they call it a Haas delay, and it's just really it's really short, 2 delays on either side with a different delay time to create that wide effect, and it sounds like it's duplicating your voice. This is me testing the multi-band compressor. Now, the final thing I want to show you in here is it's not something inherent to the template, but I'm leaving space for it in here. I'm going to show you how to do this because it's super simple, and I urge you to try it. So I call this has a million different names. I call it like the reverse reverb effect. But if you don't know how to do this, let's do it right now. Cool. So I just need a sample from this vocal sample we were playing with earlier.
Don't you?
Just need the first little bit of it. And what I do is I throw it in this I don't know where to put it, right here. What I do always is I put it in this little staging track, I call it. This is just a track with a very long delay on it. And what we're going to do is record this little bit with a lot of reverb. So we have the track with the clip sitting in it and the reverb on it. Now we have this other track that's set to resampling, which means if you have this recording, it's going to record whatever you are hearing, but in the box. So let's record this really quick. I'm going to put it on record enable and so you just need to go solo whatever you want to hear coming out, and then we just hit record. Super long. We don't need all that length, but what we're going to do here is just take some of it. Let's say, I don't know, this much. Then we're going to put it before a vocal, and I'm going to fade it in, like crossfade them a little bit here. Let's hear what this sounds like.
Don't you think like that? I will love you endlessly. Don't you think like that, I will love you endlessly.
So if you didn't know how to do that, now you do, and it's super helpful. I use it all the time. It really helps you to blend between different sections of a track and just create some really cool artificial alien sounding dynamics. So that's all I have for you today. This is a super helpful template that I would definitely go ahead and use. I don't know why I haven't built one for myself earlier. And this template will help you to get this really full, crisp sounding pop vocal sound. So I hope you really like it. Let me know if you have any suggestions for it that I can build upon and add to. Let me know down in the comments and let me know how it works for you. I'd love to hear some of the music you make with this template. And if you're recording a lot of vocals and you need some production to put under those vocals, go check out my website at onechannelproductions.com. I specialize in electronic music production for solo artists, and I would love to produce a track for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.